Okay. So yesterday what we had stopped off with was two things that we had seen yesterday was trying to start off a task and trying to call it with task object dot start and task dot run and task dot factory dot start. So first thing is a quick recap. When you did task object dot start, it was a two-step process. So you create the task and then you start it later. Versus what did we do with task dot run and task dot factory dot start? I mean, what happened in here? Yeah, for both of these, what happened?
So simultaneously, when we created the task, we run the task at the same time.
Correct. So two things are happening. Task is being created and it's immediately being started. You're not waiting to start it at a later point of time. Okay, so that was the basic difference between the two approaches that we use. But we didn't have time to try and talk about what are the differences between task.run and task.factory.start. So both of these seem to, do the same thing right now. Okay. So let's see the next example where the difference is brought out in them. So in the next example, what I'm doing is I'm calling a method that also has parameters. So far, we've been calling return methods with uh, no parameters, but let's see what if you had parameters. Now, first thing is, if you look at task, look at the, you know, options with task. What does it take as a parameter? First is
Action.
action. Action is what? No? Signature is what? Return type,
And
void,
delete.
and
Void return type,
Void,
no parameters.
no
no
parameters.
parameters.
Okay, now look at the next option. So you have something called cancellation token, but ignore cancellation token for now. It's still taking what? It's still taking action. And this continues, but here this becomes different. What is it taking here in this case?
Object.
What is it? Action of object indicating what? What does action of object mean? A function that takes return type of void and one parameter of type object. So you can call a function whose return type is void, but whose parameter will always be of type object. And there are no other variations to this. So you either have action or you have action of object. There's no other variation to this. Are we clear on this, everybody? So what methods can we call? We can call any method which takes a single parameter. What is this like? In threading, if I have to compare it, what is this similar to?
Parameterized. Uh,
Parameterized thread stack. And if you remember, your pool, thread pool, there also what you had to have a function that took only one parameter. And we have discussed this yesterday. If you wanted to pass multiple parameters, and what are the strategies that you can adopt? So one strategy was you could have passed it an array or a collection. Second possibility was you could have passed it what?
Local function,
Object or class or
local
struct.
parameter, then lambda, delegates,
Yeah.
anonymous
So
delegate.
correct. So that is another possibility where you had local variables can be accessed in the function. And one more option was there. You can create a class or a struct which contains those properties and then pass it an object to that class or struct. So these options you have seen yesterday. The same options are also available here also. So if you tried yesterday's code, then you can write similar code in this to get the same effect out here. That has not changed from yesterday. Are we clear on this, everybody? All right.
yes, sir.
So let's try calling this. Sorry. Question.
No, no, it's clear, clear.
Okay. So let's try calling this now. So you can say task of t equal to new task of what? That func1. Func1 had what? The signature of an object as a parameter. So this is how it's taking it. But along with this, you are also expected to pass the parameter out here. So now if I'm passing a out here, this should be received here as object out here. And then to call it again, you would simply be doing t dot start. Right? And that's how you're actually doing this. So in a thread, that parameter was being passed in start. But for a task, the parameter is given while you're creating the task, and then you simply call a dot start. So you, while calling start, you're not passing it. So there's a slight difference between what we did earlier and what we did here. But essentially, it's the same thing. Are we clear on this, everybody? All right. So I already have that code out here, so I'm not repeating that code, and I would need to call a t1 dot start to start it off. Okay, this is the alternate way. What are we doing? Creating an action object and then passing that object out here. This is the longer way. Don't use this way. If you're comfortable with the shorter way, please use the shorter way. That's the best option out there. Now, the other option that we had was task.factory.startNew and task.run. Now, if you look at task.factory.startNew, task.factory.startNew, this also has an overload which takes an action of object as a parameter. This has that overload. So we can call it with task.factory.startNew in a similar way. What are we doing here in this case? What am I doing here? Task.factory.startNew function 2 and passing it what value?
A
String value.
string value.
A string value which will be passed out here. But if you try doing this with task.run, okay, if you try doing it with task.run, you'll find that it takes an action. It takes a func of task, action again, func of task of t result, func of t result, func of task of t result, func of t result, but it did not take what? It did not take what?
Object.
Func of object.
Action of object.
Action of object.
It didn't have that. So you cannot use task.run with parameters. Task.run cannot call a function that has parameters. It can only call a function that has no parameters. Are we clear on this, everybody? Yeah. So now you have the differentiator. What is the differentiator? Task.factory.startNew can be called with both possibilities. But task.run can only be called with, yes, complete.
Parameters.
Task.run can only be called with functions that don't have parameters. Task.run. All right. Whereas task.factory.startNew can be called with both ways. So that is the difference between task.run and task.factory.startNew. Okay. But we can do it the other way around. We have seen how you can, use, if you want to pass string out here, a workaround to this. What is the workaround to that? Suppose you want to pass this to the function. What can we do here? Come on, I expect quicker answers. Now we've done this before. How
Make
can we
a anonymous method.
anonymous method, lambdas, local functions? So now, isn't this getting so repetitive? If you've done it before, then the same thing is applied. So you cannot pass a parameter directly, but like in this case, see what I'm doing? I'm calling task.run with the lambda here, or with a anonymous method here. And this variable s can be accessed in there. So there's a workaround to it. Are we clear on this, everybody?
Yes, sir.
Questions, if any? All right. So this is how we can call functions who have a parameter out here. Okay. In this case, still what is the problem? What is the problem yet? What is the thing that we have done so far? We are still using a void return
Void.
value. Okay, that has not changed. Okay. So you can run this code. I'm not going to run this code, but this is how you could actually go and try running the code and work. So let's look at the fourth example. In the fourth example, now I'm calling a function which has a return type. So non-void return value. Okay. So that's the fourth possibility that you have out here. Okay. Now to call a function that has a return value, the first thing here that you need to understand that the signature of the function, I mean, the return value can be either without a parameter or with a single parameter only. What is a single parameter taking?
Object.
Object. I'm not going to ask the question again, and I'm not going to definitely not going to answer the question again. What if you want to pass two parameters? Do you know how to do that?
Yes, sir.
Sir.
Either we
Yeah.
can.
So that has not changed since yesterday. Okay, what if you wanted to pass multiple values, then what do you do? So that the same solution applies here. It's just a repetition of the same thing. Don't make me say that again. Am I okay not saying that?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now let's look at how to call that method. Now, whenever you have a method that returns a value, you will not use only task. You will use task of t result. And t result here indicates what? What is the t result going to be? Supposing you want to call function 1, what will be the t result here in this case? Would be the
Integer.
yeah,
Integer.
here integer because the function is returning an int. So would be the return value from that function. Task of whatever the function is returning. Are we clear on this, everybody? So helping with this task of int, whatever t is equal to new task
No
of
task.
int. What are the overloads? Now action has changed to func.
Func.
So what is this func calling? What can we call now? What is this? What is this? Single int indicates what? What is the signature?
Integer.
No parameter.
One parameter.
No parameters
And
and
return
return
type
type is
is
And return
integer.
type is integer.
int. Going ahead, again func of int, func of object comma int indicating what? What will this indicate? What function can we call?
Parameter as object, return type as int.
Correct. So that is the other one that which takes a parameter type object and return type is int. And these are the only possibilities that we have out here. Are we clear on this, everybody? So look at the first example. What am I calling here in this case? Func1. I can also write this code as this. This is the longer form. This is the shorter form. Are you clear on the longer form?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. What about this? This is the even longer form. Right?
Yes,
Wherein
sir.
you're, yeah. But essentially, this is what you're doing. Okay. Now the second overload, wherein you're calling it with a parameter. Now I'm saying func2 comma bbb, and bbb would be the value that will be passed out here to this object. Are we clear on this, everybody?
Yes.
Okay. Now, supposing I did I've created the task out here. And I did t.start, task.start. Right? Is this code okay? Is this code okay? Give me your reason for saying what you're saying. Is this code okay? I'm saying int x equal to t.stat. What is your opinion? That what is t pointing to? T is pointing to
Task.
function one, obj func1, and func1 here is returning an int. So I'm saying int x, that's the return value, is equal to t.stat. What is your opinion of this line of code? Yes, should work, should
Return
not
value
work.
will be stored in
Sorry.
X. Return
So
value
return
is
value will be stored in x, and you will get the return value here in x. Correct? So this works. Is this okay or not okay? What did you have for breakfast?
It won't be okay because anyhow this is not returning a value. This is just to t1 dot start is just to initiate a task, not to pass any
But
value.
the task is returning some value, no? The task is
so there is
returning a
no
value.
need of
I'll do this and then later I'll do console.writeLine x. I'll do this. Okay. So is this approach okay? And if it is okay, fine. But if it is not okay, why is it not okay?
sir because return type is void.
Let's assume the return type was int. Let's assume for a moment the return type is int. Then will it work? If it's only syntax that you're worried about, let's assume for a moment the return type is int. So will this work? Will this code work then? Or is there something fundamentally wrong with it? That the approach is wrong? Yes? I'm saying that the approach is wrong. Why am I saying that the approach is wrong? Syntax we can worry about. Syntax we'll take care of. But why do you think the approach is wrong? Why am I saying the approach is wrong? This line, 158. What is the problem here? This is like writing what? Int x is equal to func1, right? Assuming func1 is the one that you're calling, like doing this. So what is the difference between these two approaches? Why is this second approach not okay?
So because it's running on different thread,
And yes, carry on, correct?
and we are storing a value which is running on main thread.
No, that is not the reason. The reason why this approach is wrong is because this is not a synchronous call. This is an async call. The thread is running on it's starting, that function is starting on a separate thread, and you're not going to wait for that thread to finish here. It is not a waiting call. No? It continues the other code, correct or no? When you do t1.start, the thread starts, but your other code also continues running in the main thread. So it's not waiting for you here to finish t1. What if t1 took 5 seconds to finish? Are you going to wait for 5 seconds here? Are you going to not do the other code out here? No, no. Your other code is going to carry on. Here, why was it okay? Here, why was it okay?
So because they were running on the same thread and they were synchronous. So
And it was waiting for it to finish. That is the important part. It was waiting for it to finish that function one, and only then it will go to the next call. Here, what is going to happen? T1 will start off separately, but your main thread, other code will carry on. So it cannot keep waiting for you for that line. Are you getting this? So we cannot get the return value here. We can only start the task, but we cannot get the return value here. Agree?
Yes,
You
sir.
all agree on this? That we cannot get the return value here because it's just starting off without waiting. Understood? Yes, everybody. Yes,
So
no,
by
or
default, any task is same like thread. So by default, it is asynchronous itself, right?
yeah, it is. It is a thread. It is a thread from a thread pool. I'm telling you the task is nothing else but a wrapper for a thread. We have said this yesterday. So what is your question? Are we understanding why I'm saying we cannot get the return value here on this line?
Yes, sir. That point is understood.
Right, everybody? So now when do we get the return value? When should we get the return value? When should we get the return value?
When
Yes?
we make it synchronous.
No, no. I want to call it asynchronously, but I want to get the return value. My
Uh,
question to you would be when should I get the return value?
when T1 thread is over, complete.
Correct. So when T1 is completed out there. Now to find out whether T1 is completed or not, I could write code in this way. I could write code in this way. So there's the is completed property, which will return true if T1 is over,
Completed.
right? If it is completed. Now, if it is not completed, then what am I doing here? What am I doing here? I'm doing a task dot wait. So this is a waiting call. It will wait for that task to complete. What is this similar to in threading? What have you tried out? Similar waiting call, waiting for the thread to complete.
T1 dot join.
Very good. Right? So here they are not calling it join, they're calling it what? Dot wait. But it's exactly the same way in which what happened with join is waiting for that thread to complete and then it'll go to the next line. That is what we're doing out here also. Are we clear on this? And after which I can now do what? After which I can do what now?
Print
T1
the
dot
result.
result. Are we clear on this, everybody? Can I be sure that the thread would have finished at this point? Can I be
Yes, sir.
sure of this? Why?
Yes, sir.
Why? Why can I be
The
sure?
you have used the is completed method above.
No, I will use the wait method. Wait method is doing what? That's doing a waiting call, waiting for it to complete the thread. If it is not completed, then I will wait for it to complete. So is completed is just telling you whether it's over or not. It's not waiting. The wait is the one that is actually ensuring that the code after that line will only run after the thread is complete. Are we clear on this, everybody? Questions, if any? So this is a way in which you'll have to read the value from the return value from the function. In the earlier scenario, we didn't need to do this. Why not? In the earlier cases, first three cases that I showed you, I didn't need to do this. Why? Why didn't I need to do this?
So
Why didn't I
because we
need
were
to do
not
it?
storing, we didn't had any kind of return time.
Yeah. So all of the three first options we had what? Functions had a void return type. So you didn't need to worry about the return value. But now you have a return value. So now you have to worry about the return value. And this is how you're doing this. Okay. Clear on this, everybody? All right. So we saw how we could call func1. Now func2 takes what? Func2 takes an object as a parameter. So this function not only has a return type, also has an object. But we have an overload here with the task. So see what this overload is taking. What is this taking? It's taking func of object comma int, meaning what? Return type int, but parameter of type object. And I'm passing BBB to it. And then I call t2.stat. Now t2.stat again, how will I now get the value? Same way. Same way. Clear on this, everybody? Are we understanding how this works? Yes, no. Some reactions would be helpful.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is how you could call. What are we calling here in this line? What are we calling here? A function that does not have a parameter but has a return value. A function that has a parameter also and a return value also. Okay. Now let's try doing, instead of doing it with task.start, let's try doing it with task.factory.startNew. So if you look at task.factory.startNew, you're using a task of int. The task.factory.startNew also has got what? Has got an int out here. And look at the overload it takes. What does it take as a parameter? A func of int. Right? So the func of int will be for a function which does not have a parameter and has a return value of type int. Similarly, look at this one. What is this one doing? Func of object comma int. So this is calling function2, which is also taking an object. The object to pass out here and passing it as what? A out here. So that's your task.factory.startNew. Any queries about task.factory.startNew or functions that are returning an int? When you're calling it, you'll call it with what? StartNew of int. Similarly, if you try doing task.run, task.run also will take what? An int as a generic type. And see the overloads. What does it take? Firstly what?
A
What is the
function
first
with
one?
integer return type.
Func of int. Second one, func of task of int. Next one, func of int again. And again, last one, func of task of int. But it does not take func of object comma int. Why doesn't take func of object comma int? Why doesn't take func of object comma int? We said that in the earlier example. No? Why doesn't it take func of object comma int? Right? What is the problem?
Cannot be used with parameters.
Yeah. Task.run cannot be used with parameters. So even in the previous example, we could not do that. So if you have parameters, then preferably use what? Preferably use what?
Factory.start.
Task.factory.startNew. If you don't have parameters, you can use either of the two. Okay. If you still insist, no, I want to pass that parameter, then what can you use? Anonymous methods. So answers are the same. They're just being regurgitated. They're just being rehashed. I'm just giving you the same thing since yesterday. Yeah, in this we're doing this, in this we're doing this. Same concept, we're doing it in this way. The syntax of the calling is slightly different, but essentially it's the same concept over and over again. All right. Questions, if any. How do I get the return values? How do I get the return values? I've not got the return values.
We have
Yes.
to use the task to complete first, and then we
Yeah.
can
T
print the
dot
result.
completes completed, T dot wait, T dot result. You could do that. Okay, clear? All right. Now I'm going to call just task one. So let me call this task two. Chalo. Task two does what? Passes an object and also is returning a value. Is also returning a value. So let's try running this. How many times is the loop going to run? 20 times, and return value will be 20. Okay. So by the time the loop finishes, I will be 20 now. That's what it's returning. And let's try running this. Let me make it a little larger number, 200. So it will take a little while to run. But the result will happen when only after the task is completed. So somewhere earlier I have started the task and okay, is it the same code? I don't know. Is it the same main that's running? Yeah. No, this is not the same one. This is a different main. So after the 200 iterations, now it goes and prints you the return value here. Are we clear on this, everybody?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now, what if I don't do this? What if I don't do this? What if I don't do this? And I try to get T2 dot result. Do you think it will work?
No, sir.
Why do you think it will not work? Tell me the reason why do you think it will not work?
Because
Sorry?
the code will be asynchronous. So T2 dot wait will not be completed while we are trying to print the result. That's one.
So there is a possibility that the task finishes before what? Before you try to get the result, the task may not be over. And at this point, if you're trying to get the result, then you're not waiting for it. But let's see what happens when I give this. I've not written any code for waiting, but even then, see what happens. Even then, see what happens. I'm still getting the value. I'm still getting value of 200. It's still waited for the task to complete. So what does that tell you? Does that tell you something? What does that imply? It doesn't tell you, but it implies. Come on.
So
Simple.
whatever the current value will be there during the time of switching, that value will be returned.
No, no, it finished it. It finished all two. I'll make it larger. I'll make it 2000.
Okay.
I'll make it 2000. So it will take a long time to run, right? It will take a long time to run. After that, also, it's giving me 2000. So what is it implying?
Wait statement is internally running.
That, no, okay. Okay, that's another way of putting it. But you're correct. I would have put in a different way. I would have used the different words. I'm saying task dot T2 dot result is also a waiting call. T2 dot result is also a waiting call. So I don't need to do this. I don't need to do this because this itself is what is a waiting call.
Is in waiting.
Yeah, this itself is a waiting call. This is also a waiting call. And we'll wait for it to finish that task. Are we clear on this, everybody?
Yes, sir.
So why did I do this? I wanted you to know about is completed and task.wait. I wanted you to know about it. For example, what if the function is not returning a value? What if there's no result coming in? Now what will happen here? You're starting the task. I'm not getting the return value, but do you think the task will finish if it's a long task? Do you think it will finish or no?
No, sir.
Why will it not finish? Why? Tell me why.
It's background.
Because we are not waiting for it.
Not just that, the answer that the other person gave.
Background.
It's a
It's a background
background.
task. Yes.
How do you know it's a background thing?
because it is taking values, thread pool, it is using thread pool. That's why.
Very good, very good, very good. Now I'm getting good answers. Now I feel you have had your breakfast. Because when you use a task, it is a wrapper for what? For the thread pool. You're actually using a function from the thread pool. And the thread pool is all threads in the thread pool are background threads. So it will
Background
not wait.
trend.
It won't wait for it by default. So if I did this now, it didn't even start the task. You see what happened? It didn't even get enough time to start the task. Program ended even before that happened. But if I put this code, if I put this code, what will happen now? What will happen now? Yes. Will it wait now? Yes, no.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So I want you to know about that. I want you to know that, that this wait is there and this is completed is there. It tells you what is happening in the task. You need to know that. But for result, you don't need to do that. Because result itself is what? Result itself is a
Wait
waiting
call.
call.
Waiting step.
Okay. So try it out with both. Not giving this also and giving it also. Try it out with both. So I'm commenting these lines, but when you're in the lab, you need to try it out with like how I tried it out. What am I doing with this one? Calling a task.run to start the function. What am I doing with this one? Task.factory.start new, which is two options without parameters and with
With
parameters.
parameters.
Right? This is what we're done. And ideally, I would have liked this to finish this code yesterday, so you all could have tried it out and then we could have done it. But I was completely out of time. There was no way I could have done this. It took me about half an hour plus to do it. So I wouldn't have been able to finish all this code in yesterday's session. So ideally, I would have liked to do that. So you had tried it out and then we can do the next section. But anyway, now this is what we have. All right. So this is how you would be working with tasks. And most of the code that you're writing in here from now on, if you're going to write async code, you will definitely be in touch with the task. Are we clear on this, everybody? All right. So I'm going away from tasks at this point, but we will keep, coming back to it in all the next 2-3 days sessions that we are going to be having. Okay. All right. By the way, I'm having a session tomorrow and day after. I will finalize the timings and other details with Aniket today, but we do have a session tomorrow and day after for sure. Okay. Uh, Moving away from tasks. Any questions before I move on to my next example? Okay. Now we're going to be working with, whenever we work with tasks, we generally work with, calling a task with the await keyword. So that's an option that you have. And let's try and understand how this await works. So to begin with, look at the code that I have in the first function here. Here is where I'm calling a function out here. Ignore the syntaxes key. Why am I doing what right now? I will explain all of that in a minute. Not in a minute, but shortly. So I want to make a call to that function. So the function I'm calling is do work async. Do work async is returning a string. Ignore why I'm doing task of string right now, but it is returning a string. So we just discussed why we can't do this. Remember we talked about this? string message equal to t1 dot start. Supposing you had a task object and then you created, a task object pointing to that function, and then you tried calling it. So this would not work for sure. Agree on this, everybody?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. So if you wanted to get the return value where you're calling it itself, you can do it with await. Okay, now there are certain preconditions and all of that. We'll talk about that in a minute. But what is await doing? We are trying to call a function and starting it off on a new task, and on the same line, I'm getting the return value. So this is what I was trying here. This doesn't work, but I can do an await and that function name. Now, when you do await and the function name, internally it's creating a task, starting the function on that task, and this await is a waiting call for that task. So that await is doing all jobs. What is it also doing? Internally, what is it doing? That method is returning a task. So there's a task being created here, and it's like doing a task dot wait, as well as doing what? Task dot result to get the result. And I can directly get the value in here. Are we clear on this, everybody? So if I run this code right now, the output I would get here is before calling the function. So this function I'm returning some value, but I'm also done what? What am I also
Wait
done
for
in this
the
function?
5 seconds.
I'm simulating a long running function. So it's going to take 5 seconds to run. So how would my code run? I'll call a before. It is not going to go to the next line until this line is over. Why? Why will it not go to the next line unless this line is over? Even though it's starting off on a separate, task on a separate thread. Why will it not go to the next line?
You're using await.
And what is specialty of await? Await is also a waiting call.
Waiting.
So unless that function is over, it's not going to go to the next line. And after this function is over, 5 seconds later, the function is over, then it will go and do the after, and then it will go and print the message that the function is returning. Are we clear on this, everybody? Yes? Questions, if any? So before happened, the saying 5 seconds to return the value, then the after, and then the done, work done. The work done is just the message that's coming back from there. Questions, any at this point of time, based on only what we have discussed? Clear on this so far?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now my question to you is, then what is the point of writing asynchronous function? Because what is happening now is what? You're waiting for that function to get over here. So isn't this code like doing this? What am I doing on line 9? Line 9 is doing what?
You're directly calling the do work
Synchronously.
sync method.
Yeah, I'm calling it synchronously. Meaning what? Unless that function is over, I can't go to the next line. So here also, won't I get the same effect?
Yes, sir. Same.
Agree or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So what is the advantage of writing the asynchronous method here? So to understand this difference, let's try and understand one more concept. What is the difference between a blocking and a non-blocking call? Okay. Now both these calls, both line number 9 and line number 10, both of these, see line number 9 firstly is what? Which one is this? This is the synchronous call. Line number 10 is the asynchronous call. But what is common in both of them are waiting calls. Both of them are waiting calls. That means unless you finish that line of code, you cannot go to the next line of code. That is what I mean by the waiting part. What is making it wait here? What is making it wait here?
Await
Await
keyword.
await is making it wait here. And what is sync calls are anyway waiting calls. You have been doing that all along. So no problem about that. But the difference between the two is that await is a non-blocking call, whereas do work here, which is a sync call, is a blocking call. So let's understand what you mean by blocking call. Blocking call simply means that the thread that you're calling it on, now where are we calling this from? We are calling it from the main thread. We're calling this from the main thread. So if it is a blocking call, the thread that you're calling in on is also blocked from doing any other code. You cannot perform any other action on this thread. But a non-blocking call indicates that the thread that you're calling it on is free to do other tasks. But it is waiting. It is waiting, but it can do other things if it wants to. Here, what is happening? It is also waiting, but it cannot do anything else. Are we clear on the difference between what blocking and non-blocking means?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now to illustrate this point further, I'm going to show you the same code, not in the console application. Because in a console application, it looks the same. You cannot make out a difference. You cannot understand what is a blocking and a non-blocking call in a console app. But we will try doing this same code in a Windows app where there is a UI and where there are other things happening out here. And there you will understand the difference between blocking and non-blocking. So I have another project that I have in here. Okay. So there's a UI available here. Now I have two buttons that I am working with. The first button, I have written synchronous code. So this button, I've written code like this. I've written code like this. Okay. In the second button, I'm using await. So in the second button, I've written code like this. Okay. Now, what are both the buttons doing? Let me show you the code. So I'm calling this function called long running code. So this is your synchronous code, right? And what is this function simply doing? It's running for a very long time, and it returns the value of j at the end of that function. And after that function is over, I'm going and showing the value of j in the label. I have a label out there which is showing me the value of j. So this is what my code is doing. Something very simple. So that calling a function is returning a value and performing this. But this is a synchronous call, which is a blocking call. Blocking call means the main thread on which you're running your code, wherein the UI is running and everything else is running, is going to be blocked from doing anything else. Let's try running this and showing you. So see this now. Now, right now, I can move this window. I can do other things out here. I can do everything else out here. I can resize the window. So the main thread is allowing me to do these operations, right? It's very responsive out here. Nothing, no problem out here. I can move it around whatever I want to. Now I'm going to click on this sync code. I'm going to click on this. And this will be a blocking call, meaning the moment it starts calling this function, now the main thread is blocked from doing anything else. Now when it will be released? Only after it has finished this code. So what am I doing at the end of the code? I'm showing you a done out here. Okay, I'm showing you a done in this label out here. So until that done appears, the function is still running and the UI is now blocked from doing anything else whatsoever. I'll show you. I'm about to click on this, pay attention. When I click on this, after clicking on this, I'm trying to move it here. I've tried to move it to the left corner. Now my hands are off. Okay, I'm not using the mouse. There's nobody sitting next to me. All this while the code is running. After a few seconds, done will appear and the window will automatically move there. But all this while, nothing can happen. The window is not moving, nothing is happening. It's totally unresponsive. The form has become unresponsive. When did it move? When did it move? Only after that function was over. Now, all this while, what has been done? This was a blocking call. Have you understood what a blocking call means?
Yes, sir. Understood.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Is that for me? Was that for me? Okay. I couldn't understand if somebody said something. I couldn't figure out what it was. So have you understood what is a blocking call? Now the same code, I'm going to do it with a await. Okay. And what is this using? This is using a separate thread internally. And this here is going to be a non-blocking call. Same code. I'm running the same code. I'm calling the long running code too, but this is, an asynchronous code that's running. So look at this now. When I call this await, now code is running. But while the code is running, what can I do? What is possible here? All operations, all the UI operations are possible. Now look at the label. At some point, the code will be over. But till then, I can continue working with this, which is not possible earlier. So this is not a blocking call. This is a non-blocking call. And now the done is done. Are we clear on this, everybody? Questions? Understood?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. So this is the difference between a blocking and a non-blocking call out here. I cannot show it to you in a console app, which is why I was forced to show you in a WinForms app where other things are also happening. That's your code is not the only thing that's running. All right, let's take this a little further and try and understand how you're going to write an await. Now, while calling await, there are certain rules. The first rule is that you can only call await on a function returning a task. If the function doesn't return a task, you cannot call await. So for you to call await, what it needs to be an awaitable call. Awaitable meaning what? It has to be returning a task, and that task then can you can call await on that task. So I'm not returning a string here. What am I directly doing? I'm returning a task of string. Now because I'm returning a task of string, I'm now doing what? What is this doing? Task.run is creating what? Task.run is creating what? What does task.run return? Returns a task of string here in this case. Because I'm doing what? What am I doing here? What is that code doing?
Returning one.
Returning a string. Supposing I return
Yeah.
a value here, then what will task.run now return? Task of int, right? So that's what I'm doing out here. So based on whatever I'm returning, right, task.run will return that value. So that's why it's returning a task of string right now. Why am I forced to do it as a task of something? If I want to call it as a await, it has to return a task of something. It cannot be just returning this. So you return a task which returns a string. Are we clear on this, everybody? First thing out here. While calling this also, you are now doing a return await of whatever. Now, if your method is going to return a task, if your method is going to return a task, then you need to mark the method as async. If you don't mark the method as async, then it causes you a problem. So methods returning a task needs to be marked as an async method, right? Also, when you're writing an await, now when you're writing an await out here, this method also needs to be an async method. So methods that have that have await in them need to be a async method. That's the second rule out here. Remember this. First rule is what we can only call await with a method returning a task. Secondly, moment you're using await, you're forced to use what? You're forced to use what? Async. Your method
Async.
needs to be marked as async. If I didn't mark it as async, it gives you an error saying that you can only call await with a async method. Are we clear on this, everybody?
Yes.
Okay. Full stop. End of the rules for await. Now, another rule. If your method is a main method and the method is an async method, then main must also return a task. Another rule, unrelated to await. What is this other rule? We are saying if main is async, then you cannot leave it void. And you cannot leave it void. If you leave it void and you try running the code, it gives you an error. And what is the error it gives you? What does it tell you? Right? It just tells you it does not contain a suitable static main. Now, what is not suitable? What is the problem here? What is the issue here? Main also needs to be
Because the
made what?
return type is void.
Yeah. So the main needs to return a task. But this is the rule only for main. Only for main, not for the others. So now here, what do we need to do? Look at this code of mine. This code is using an await. This code is using an await, right? Sorry, here. This code is using an await. But this code, even though it's async, is not writing task out here. But we are writing what? We are writing void. Are you clear on this, everybody? But if it is a main method, then it needed to be a returning a task. Are we clear on this, everybody? Questions, if any? No questions? All right. So let me carry on in that case. What are the advantage that you saw with using await? What were the, if you see the code out here, what have we done out here? How has your code become a little shorter?
We have
In this
not
example, yeah.
written the if else block for wait.
Not just that, I've not even created a task also. Have I created any task out here?
No, sir.
In this code where I'm calling it, I've not created any task. When you say await, that task is internally understood. And I don't need to do the dot wait and all of that. Are you clear on this, everybody? But the problem here would be that this now behaves like synchronous code. Why is it behaving like a synchronous code? What is happening now? This becomes
Using
a
waiting call.
waiting call. Waiting call means unless you finish that line, you're not going to go to the next line. So now, if I don't want this sort of behavior, I'm going to show you an alternate way of doing this. So supposing you want to call this method, but you don't want it to, see here, what is it doing? When you run the code, it says before After before, it's waiting for that method to get over, and only then the after is getting called. So before then 5-second delay, then the method is called, and then your code after that is done. But in the second example that I'm going to do, I'm going to change this behavior. So in the second example, let me first show you how it runs, and we'll talk about the code later. So look at what happened in the second one. Before and after happened immediately. And 5 seconds later, what am I getting? I'm getting work to be done. So this is a alternate way, because now what am I doing? I'm not waiting while I'm calling the method. I'm not waiting there for the return value. I'm calling the method, but I will go and wait for the return value later. Are you getting what I'm saying? What is the difference in these two approaches? So if you have to write code in this manner, what will you need to do? Now you need to create a task. Now you need to create a task. What is this method returning? What is the method returning?
String.
No, not string. It's returning a task of
Task
string.
string. Task of string.
Therefore, I have to write task of string. I have to write whenever a method returns a value, I have to do task of the return value. So now I'm doing a task of the task of string and pointing do work async. Then I do a task dot start. So I've got the before task is started here. Now my code for after can run immediately. Now it's not waiting here, but I have finished all my other code that I need to do. Where will I now wait? Where will I now wait? On line 31, where I'm now waiting for what? Task.result. Are we clear on this, everybody? I'm waiting for task.result out here. Clear on this? And then, of course, I'm printing the value. So where is the wait now happening? Not when you're calling the function. In the earlier case, where was the wait happening? Where was the wait happening? Where was the wait happening?
Line 10
As soon
itself.
as you called the function, you were waiting for it. Now you're calling the function, but the wait is happening at a later point of time. So if you want code like this, then you can write it in this way. And this was the result that we got. Before, after, immediately, and 5 seconds later, you got your wait. Clear on this, everybody? Questions, if any? So we're going to use async and await a lot, in further code. Async actually is not really meaningful. What you're using is await, but we have said await needs to come in what? In a function marked as async. So this is why we generally say async await. Clear on this, everybody? Okay, I'm just trying to show you all the code at once. All right. Okay, so that is how you would be working with this. Okay, all this while I've been working on my hotspot. My connection was disconnected when we started the session. So I'm going to try to switch back to my regular network, and I'm going to take a quick 2-minute break where I disconnect and I join back in again, right? So I'll take a 5-minute break actually. I want to try out a couple of other things that I need to open here also. So whatever operations you're doing, basic operations that you're doing is firstly writing into a stream or reading from a stream. So stream is essentially your, whatever, if you're trying to put in a string out there, the string is getting converted into a, continuous set of bytes. And this is what is being written to the stream. Or the other operation, which is reading from the stream, also would be read as a stream of bytes. So there is a class called stream, which is actually an abstract class. And we have also another class called file stream, which inherits from the stream class and allows you to have file handling operations out here. Okay. Okay. Just trying to close unwanted projects in the system is unnecessarily slowing down. Actually, every time I start a Zoom or a Google Meet session, my antivirus goes into overdrive and really slows down the whole system. Otherwise, if I'm not on this, then my system is really, I'm used to running it really quick. But with these sort of options, it slows down. Anyway, so I have a sample program that I want to open and show you all. The sample program that I have used the WinForms application. I have not used a console application, but I'll tell you what I want you to do or how you can try out the code. So let's look at some of the basic operations that you can do with files. To begin with, use the system.io namespace, and you could use some of the classes to find out information about the directories, the files, the drives that you have on your system, right? So let's start with the drives. And you have a drive info class, which gives you information about a particular drive and what information can you get. So drive dot, for example, a lot of these properties are self-explanatory. You don't even need me to tell you what they are. So available free space, for example, what will that give you? Yes. Available free space, as the name
Free
suggests, to
space
give
in the drive.
free space on the drive. Or drive format. What are the format of the drive? Drive type. Okay. It's an enum actually. Then you have different drive types. So look at some of the drive types that you have here. Okay. Or right. So you have a property here called total size, right? Whether a drive is ready or not, total free space, right? Volume label of that drive. All of these properties you can set, or not set, but at least get out here and print values out here. So you can try printing all of these. I'm not explaining further. When you are trying it out, try printing all the properties of the drive. Just like you have a drive info object, you would have a directory info object. So you have one of this. And you also have a directory.create directory. You have this, a class called directory, which has static members in there. So both options are available to you. First option, you can create an object of that type. Like in this case, what am I pointing to right now? Which directory am I pointing to? C colon, 4 times A. And if I did dir dot directory info object dot, so you'll get properties out here. Like for example, dot attributes would give you details about the directory, or creation time, or you know whether a directory exists or not, the extension of the directory, full name of the directory, and so on and so forth. So you got certain properties like this, and you got a lot of methods as well. So for example, create would allow you to create a directory, or create a subdirectory, or enumerate directories. Basically, loop through all the directories which are there under this directory. Enumerate files. Get a list list of all the files out here. So this is returning an IEnumerable of file info, for example, and then you can loop through that. Okay. Get files returns an array of file info instead of an IEnumerable of file info, an array of file info. Get directories returns a array of directory info. So you have different options available here which gives you information about the directory. Now, instead of doing it through the directory object, you can also I got disconnected somewhere in between. So I don't know at what point it got disconnected. Can you all hear me right now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
At what point did I get disconnected? Can you all tell me? Because I just kept talking on and then I realized I'm disconnected.
We were at the directory info.
We are at the directory info. So how long back? Okay. I can't share the screen. Can
Create
Aniket, can
directory.
you? Oh, I think my other login has not got logged off.
Yes, sir.
I don't know what to do.
Abhishek can remove that login, I think. Post.
Yeah, thank you. So can you see my screen now? I just shared it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, can
Yes,
you?
sir.
Okay. Okay, so let me get back to where I was, and so there are two ways of doing this, either with creating a directory info object or with directory dot. Uh, did I reach the part where I went to directory dot, or was I still on directory info?
Directory info.
I was still on directory info. Okay. So directory info has some non-static members, which allow you to find out properties of the directory, as well as allow you to call certain methods. Okay. I'm not going to go through all the methods and properties here, but if you can see, some of them are very easily understandable, giving you properties of whether the directory exists or not, what is the extension, full name, so on and so forth. Also, you have a lot of methods available here. So dot create, for example, would create the directory and so on and so forth. Create subdirectory, enumerate directories, returns an IEnumerable of directory info. So it returns a collection of directory info where you can loop through and find out information about that. Enumerate files gives you a list of all files that are there in the current directory. You also have a method like get directories, get files. Get files returns an array of file info instead of a collection of file info. Get directories also returns an array instead of a collection. So you have a lot of these methods available here, which you can access this way. You can also access the methods with static methods of the directory class. So directory dot, and then you have these methods directly. You don't even need to create an object of that class. So you have this second way of doing it. A lot of these methods are available, are repeatable in both directory or info object as well as in the directory class. All right. Go through these methods. I'm not going to go through all of them. My question to you was this. This is where I realized that I'm disconnected. I'm trying to create a directory out here. I'm trying to create a directory out here with create directory. And my question was, why do I need a double slash? And what am I doing in the second example, which is avoiding the double slash? So first thing is, why do I need a double slash? Yes.
So because it is in the C drive.
No. What if I did this?
Maybe it is creating a new folder if it is not present.
Escape character.
My question is, why do I need to give a double slash instead of a
Escape
single slash?
sequence.
Correct. Because if you give a single slash, it takes it as an escape sequence. Like C:/ Nitin, this will be taken as slash and will be taken as what? As a new line. So to indicate that it's not a escape sequence, you give a double slash. Now, alternatively, instead of giving a double slash, what have I used in here? What have I used in here? I've used the @. And if I use the @, what that tells it is that whatever characters I'm giving in here are not an escape sequence. So it should be treated like a literal. It should be treated like a regular, string without any escape characters in there. So wherever your strings have a slash in them, to prevent it from being treated like a, special character, you have two options available. Everywhere give what? Everywhere give what? A
Backslash.
double slash. Or
@.
second option is what? Given at the beginning of it. Okay. All right. Now, in today's session, you all need to be even more responsive than usual because my connection is frequently dropping off. I'm now on my hotspot again. But my hotspot again is causing problems. I mean, that also is, going off in between. So I think in my area there might be some issue with the network, and I'm facing this problem in the earlier batch also, where in between I'm suddenly getting disconnected. So a response would be appreciated. That tells me that I'm still connected. Okay. All right. Just like you have the directory and the directory info object, you also have the file and the file info. So file has static methods. File info, you'll have to create an object of that class, and this has non-static methods where you can access it individually. We're going to be doing some of these methods. We're going to be trying in my later code out here. There are examples that I'm using out here, which I'm using both file info and file. But if you look at some of the file methods, create, move, delete, open, read, exist, append all lines, append text, all of these are common operations that you might want to perform with a file. Okay. So these are directly, file dot gives you this. Whereas the other option is you create a file info object, and then if you created that object dot, this also is giving you similar methods out here. We're going to try out a few of these in the later examples that I have. You could use either. There's no restriction key which one to use. You could use either the file related methods or file info methods. So let's start with some common operations that we want to perform out here. So whenever you have a stream, you're going to have a couple of basic operations that you can do with the stream. You can either write from a stream or write to a stream or read from a stream. While writing or reading with the stream, you are having two further options. You can have it either as formatted output or unformatted output. If you use unformatted output, it's like raw data, like, you have to actually convert it into a set of bytes. So you have to do this yourself. But with the formatted output, okay, as the name says, formatted output, you can, like for example, work with a string, work with work with a whatever boolean, right? Other types of data types that you can work with. You can work with these type of data types. So two operations that we have, either formatted or unformatted output. We're going to try out both of these. Okay. To do so, we're going to manipulate the streams, and stream, as I said, is an abstract class. So more specifically, we're going to work with the file stream to work with this data. So let's try firstly writing to a file. And I'll take the unformatted option first. I'll take the unformatted option first, where everything that I'm doing, I have to convert it to an array of bytes. So what I'm doing here is I'm creating a stream, file stream. Okay, that's what we've been looking at. And file stream is in system.io, so add a using on that. File stream itself inherits from stream, which is an abstract class. Now, how do I get this file stream? To get the file stream, I'm using the file class that we saw earlier. And one of the methods there was file.open. Look at what file.open returns. Returns a file stream. First parameter is the path that you want to, which file you want to open. Secondly, the file mode. I have opened this file in the file mode dot create. So let's understand what each of these file modes are. First one, if you said it is opened in the create mode, this works in two ways. If the file does not exist, then it will create the file. But if the file already exists, then it will overwrite the file. So file mode.create will overwrite the file if it is already present, and will create the file if it was not present. Okay. Instead of overwriting the file, if you want to append to the file, you can open it in the file mode.append. If the file was not present, it will create it. If the file was already present, then whatever you're writing into it will be added to the file. That's the file mode.append. All right. create new insists that the file that you're creating should not be present. So if you try to give, create new, and if the file was already present, it throws you an exception, right? It will tell you a one-line expression of what it's doing. So if the file is already present, a IO exception is thrown. So what is it file new, create new doing for you? Saying that the file must be a new file. It cannot be an existing file. Existing file, it will give you an error. Truncate, on the other hand, is the exact opposite of create new. So what truncate does is, truncate would do what? If the file was not present, right, then it will give you an error. In create new, what did we say? If the file was present, it will give an error. To truncate, the file must be there to begin with. And if it is not there, it will throw an exception. Now, whatever file you open is truncated. Truncated meaning what? All the bytes are removed. I mean, there's nothing in the file after that. But file must be there present to begin with. If it is not there, it causes you a problem. These four are all allowing you to write to the file. Append, create new, truncate. Are we clear on this, everybody? Yeah.
So,
We connected. Yeah. Okay.
So what is the difference between create and create new?
If the file was already present, then create new throws an exception. Create doesn't.
Okay.
Create will overwrite that file.
Which overrides. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Are we clear on these four options first? That brings us to open. So if you wanted to read from the file, then you would open it in the open mode. Prerequisite is that the file must be present. If the file is not present, open will fail and throw an exception. Right? Throw the file not found exception. All right. There's a variation to this called open or create. So what open or create would do is allows you to do both. It allows you to read from the file and write to it. If the file was present, it will open it in the open mode. If file was not present, then it will create the file. Right? So open or create is doing both jobs. If present, open it. If not present, create it. Right? And can be used for both read and write. So in this example, of course, I'm using create because every time I run this, I want a new file to be created. Even if the file exists, I would like it to be overwritten. Okay. This returns a file stream. The stream has a method called write, and see the parameters with write. First parameter is a byte array. So this is the part which I'm telling about the unformatted output. Everything that you want to write has to be converted into an array of bytes and then written into the stream. Second parameter there is the offset. How many bytes should it leave before it starts writing it? Okay. So 0 means it will write from the beginning of the stream. If you set 5, for example, it will, leave 5 bytes and then write it. Then lastly, what? Number of characters or count of characters that you want to write. That's your array.length. So what I have here is a byte array, and I actually want to write a hello world. But because this write takes a byte array, I had to convert the hello world into a byte array. And to convert into byte array, one of the classes that we used out here is encoding.default.getBytes. So which takes a string as a parameter and converts it to a byte array. Are we clear on what we've done in this example? Right. Questions, if any? All right.
So it is necessary to convert it into only byte, or we can convert it into something else.
The write requires this. The
Okay.
signature of write requires it to be a byte array. So
Mhm.
which is what I said. See, I said that there are two ways of doing it. First possibility is you work with unformatted data. So this is what we're doing right now. This is the raw data. Convert everything to bytes and write it. We
Okay,
will
sir.
look at formatted option also, but that is not using this, using a different class altogether. The file stream is giving you unformatted data. Okay.
So this unformatted data that we are actually using. So where exactly do we get this unformatted data? Do we get it from directly for?
I would be working with, let's say an integer or a string or something else.
Yes.
But I'm saying this now needs to be converted to an array of bytes.
Okay,
So
sir.
this is doing that.
Yes.
So whatever data that you have needs to be first converted into an array of bytes because it only understands an array of bytes.
Mm.
Okay.
Yes.
Supposing I'm just saying if you had an employee object, what do you need to do? You'll have to somehow convert it to an array of bytes and then work with it. All right. Now the reverse operation, I want you all to help me. So supposing I've written this. Now I want to read the values. So can you suggest to me what all would I need to do to read the values? First step would be what? So the file is already containing the values. I want to now read it as unformatted data. First step would be what? Yes. What would we do in this case? Exact reverse. First step.
So you convert it.
The first step is open the file.
Yes.
Unless you open the file, how do we do? We want to read from the file. Whatever you've written, you want to read. The first step would be what? Help me with the first step. How would this code change?
Sir, file mode we have to write open.
Right. So instead of the create mode, you'll open it in the open mode. Now, second step is instead of writing to the stream, what do you need to do?
So read.
So let's look at the parameters with read. There is a stream.read also, just like a stream.write. What does stream.read take as a parameter? First parameter is
Byte array.
byte array. Second parameter again is offset. Third parameter again is count.
Count.
So this is again the parameters of read are similar to the parameters of write.
Right.
Right.
Okay. So now we'll have to create a byte array. We don't have a byte array. So we'll have to create a byte array. So how do you create it? Byte square brackets ARR is equal to what should be the size of the array?
Array.length.
So the array dot length you don't know. The array dot length you're creating an array now. You
It's
don't
the
know what
same
is
as
the
the file.
size.
Okay. Okay.
It's the same as the
Sorry.
array in the file.
Same as the
Array in the file that we actually try to
no,
open.
right, but you don't know which file. No? You might be opening any file.
Mm.
So how do you know what should be the size of your array? How do you know what should be the size of your array? You're now creating an array that can read from the file. What will it have to be based on?
So we need a value and we need to put that value. We need to get the array size and put it into the value, I guess.
But what array size are you going to create?
Mm.
My question is this. How are you going to know what is the... I don't want to say anything else because then I'll be giving you the answer.
Yes.
So give me an explanation. Okay, what should be the size of the array?
Till end of the sentence.
Sorry, say that again.
Till end of the line. Uh,
Which line?
the file in file contain that we do have.
So the size of the array will depend upon the size of the file. Supposing the file had 10 bytes, your array needs to be of size 10. So the stream.length will tell you what are the number of characters that are there in the stream. And that will give you the size of your array. So you will say byte ARR is equal to new byte of what? Stream.length. Your array size needs to be the size of the stream that you're reading. Are we clear on this? Okay, so now you got your array. So now what? Stream.read. Firstly, read into the array. From offset, what? Offset would be 0. And how many characters to read? How many characters to read? How many bytes to read?
Stream.length.
Sorry?
Stream.length.
Stream.length. And stream.length will be same as array.length. Agree? Because once you create the array has been created from the stream.length.
Yes, sir.
So you could use stream.length and that would be the correct way. But even if you use array.length, that would work as well. So that will allow you to read it. Now, once you're read it, you got what now? You got a byte array. Now, that byte array now needs to be converted into a string. So what have I done here? I have written a method which converts a string into a byte array. You'll have to write some method which converts the byte array into a string, and then you get the string, and then you do whatever you want with the string. Are we getting this, everybody?
Yes, sir.
So I'm not telling you what to do to convert a byte array to a string. Look out for that method. And you should be able to write the code for read yourself. The two hints that I've given you here are what? That you need to use stream.length to get the size of the array, and then stream.read to read from the stream. Stream.read, of course, uses the array that you created in the previous one, previous line. So this is how you use unformatted output to read it. Would you be able to do it, or you want me to spoon feed you?
Sir, we'll try it out once.
Yeah. So the answer should not be we'll try it out once. The answer should be, yeah, I'm sure we'll do it. That confidence should be there. What is so difficult? If I can write to it, I can read from it. What is so difficult in that? Okay. All right. So I expect you to do that, to read from there. And the clues are here. Okay. Right. So this is an example of unformatted output. Now the second one that we're going to try out is using a stream writer. And the stream writer uses formatted output rather than unformatted output. Now, formatted output is a lot simpler to work with. You don't have to worry about converting it to bytes, reading it as bytes, writing it as bytes. You don't have to do all of that. So look at this file.create text. What does it return? File.create text is returning a stream writer. And the stream writer has methods for formatted output. Now, you all have already tried formatted output with a stream. You all have already done that. When you in .NET, when you wrote your first line of code, you were working with formatted output for a stream. Because the console is also another example of a stream. And when you do a console.writeLine, what does writeLine take as a parameter? Yeah. String, int, bool, whatever. So you're sending in to the console a formatted output. The write line method is taking a formatted output and converting into a raw set of bytes. That it's doing for you internally. So when you did console.writeLine, you have already used formatted output. And here you'll find that the writer.writeLine, streamWriter.writeLine, this method also has a writeLine method, which is exactly the same as your console.writeLine. All the overloads that you had in console.writeLine are also available here. Right? So if you know how to use console.writeLine, you already know how to use the streamWriter. What am I doing here? I'm writing 2 lines, and very important to close the writer. If you don't close the writer, then the file is kept open. Are we clear on streamWriter? Much easier than
Yes, sir.
the
Unformatted.
unformatted. Give me the code for stream reader. I already told you the answer. I was going to tell you, give me the code for reading it. So tell me
Writer.
what is it.
So writer.readline.
Writer.readline.
Will writer read a line, darling? Listen to yourself. You're saying writer.readline.
Same reader.
So instead of stream writer, now this changes to stream.
Stream reader.
Reader.
Instead of create text is creating a file. Instead of create text, what should you use now?
Read text.
Opposite of create, we saw the earlier modes. What is the opposite of create?
Open.
Open.
Open. So here instead of create text, my guess would be open text rather than read text, correct? Okay. Instead of write line, what will you use? Come on. Instead of write line, what will you use?
Read line.
Read line. So if you work with the console, you already worked with something similar. Read line returns a string, right? So look at my code, same things. Stream reader is equal to file.openText. Reader.readLine returns a string. Check for what? That the string should not be null. Null meaning what? What has happened when it's null? There's nothing more to be read in the reader. So you finish reading everything. So when it is null, you exit the loop. And whatever string you're reading, I'm showing it in the message box. You can show it on the console.writeLine is. Always remember to close it before you end your program. Are we clear on this, everybody?
So can you explain that while part, because I got disconnected?
This is the first part that's happening.
Hmm.
What is this returning?
S.reader.readline. Yes.
Readline returning a string. That string is being assigned to S, and you're checking for what? S should not be equal to null.
It means the file should have some values.
Yeah, so it's a loop. Supposing you're writing 5 lines in the file. Now you read 5 lines. 6th line you try to read. If it returns null, that means you reached the end of the file. Okay. So keep reading it till you reach null.
The last line.
Null meaning nothing there. No more things to be read.
Okay.
So the string that you read now, what do you do? You read the string.
We displayed in the message show.
Yeah.
Message box.
I'm using message box here because I'm using a WinForms app. But you are not going to use the WinForms. What will you do? Display it on the console.
Yes. Thanks.
Right. So if you write to a file and read from file, I'm writing what hello world and line 2, read from file, hello world and line 2. Are we clear on this, everybody?
Yes.
Questions?
Sir, in line number 76, will it be showing string by string? It will capture
Yeah,
and show?
yeah, one string at a time.
Okay.
Supposing you wanted to show everything together, what will you do? How will you do this different?
We will keep it adding to a particular string and then display the string as a whole at the end.
Correct. At the end of it, correct. Okay. So this is what we are done with text files. What we worked with right now was with text files. We're going to try similar code with binary files. Now, what are the major differences between binary files and text files? Yes.
Binary files are 1 and 0, and text files are words alphabet.
Right. So binary files would be internally storing in the binary format, which is the 0, 1 raw data format. Text files would be storing it like in Notepad, okay, where you can open the file and read it. So if you look at a binary file, it'll just be a continuous string of zeros and ones. You wouldn't know what the data in there is, right? So the order in which you write the data in the binary file determines the order in which you read the data. Whatever order you're written it in is how you're going to read the value in. Now, supposing I didn't know the order in which it has been written, then I wouldn't be able to read the file. So generally, binary files are more secure than text files if you want to store your data, because only somebody who knows the format of what the file is storing will then be able to read from the file. Otherwise, it will just be a continuous zeros and ones that you're getting. Okay. So let's have a look at how we can use a binary writer or reader out here. So this one I'm not using file, I'm using file info. So the other class, remember we had tried out earlier file. So far we've been trying out all file methods. Now we're trying out a file info. So to begin with, I'm going to be using a binary writer. Now what does binary writer require as a parameter? Requires a stream as a parameter. So we want a stream that we could have opened. How could we have opened the stream somewhere else if we are getting a stream? What else could we have done to create a stream here? We've written this code also, right? File.open, remember? But file.open was with what? With the file class. Instead of using file.open, what else am I doing here? What am I using here? I'm using this file info just to show you how file info works. So the file info has a method here called openWrite, which returns a file stream. Right? So the only reason I'm using file info is to show you another example. Otherwise, I could have done it with file.open also. So binary writer requires a file stream, which I'm getting with file info object.open, right? Once I have the binary writer, now this has different overloads here. If you look at write, 18 overloads. So what can we write here again? What are all of these? What are all of these? Like, what are they similar to? Similar to what? Console.writeLine. There also you had so many different 18 overloads where you could write different types of data. The only thing is the data, the order in which you're writing it, you need to know the order of this data to be able to read with it. So this is simple. Binary writer.write, and then I'm writing a string, an int, and a boolean. So just showing you different values out here. Remember to close the file after opening it. Once you're finished writing to it, give me the reverse code. Give me the reverse code. Give me the code for reading from it. Yes.
So first you have to create a binary reader. To open the
Binary
reader to open the file.
reader. Thank you. Not right. Thank you. Okay. Instead of opening it in open write mode, what will you need to open it in?
Read.
Open read mode. And instead of binary writer dot write, you'll have what? Binary reader dot
Reader.
read. But there is a difference in the read method. So I'll show you what the read method is doing. But let's have a look at this. So exactly the reverse. Binary reader equal to new binary reader dot open read. Now you don't have a only read method. So what are the methods that I have? There's a read string, read int, read bool. There'll be a read decimal. There'll be a read double. So all the different data types that you have, you'll have those options available to you, where you can read a block of, that integer out. Now the order in which you have saved it is the order in which you are reading it. Are we clear on this? What if somebody doesn't know the order? He won't be able to open their file. So let's try running this binary write and binary read. So whatever, hello 100 and true, the other values that I've written in there. Are we clear on this? Questions, if any? All right. So a couple of things. How are you going to, do this example? Because this example I have in WinForms. I don't want you to do it in WinForms. So what will you do out here? You will create a console app in which you write a main method. In the main method, what can you do now? Suppose you want to write this code. Let's say you want to write code for write to a file. So what would you do here is you'll say whatever static void write to file. Right? And in this method, you will copy all the code that I have here. And after you write this code, now how do you call it now? From main write to file. Okay. So that's how you test your code. Similarly, you will create another method, whatever, static void read from file. And from main now, instead of write to file, you can comment out this code and now call what? Read from file. So end up creating multiple functions for each of the button clicks and write down the code for that. Are you clear on this, everybody? Yes?
Yes, sir.
Second thing is, if you want to open a project, now this project, I have not coded anything today. I've coded on yesterday's code. So I'm uploading yesterday's code also, right? I'm uploading yesterday's code also, but today's code, I have not coded in a new project and done that. I have just opened an existing code and shown it to you. So I'll be uploading these files. Now what you need to do is, let's say if you want to see the async await with UI example, you need to go into that folder and open that CS_proj file. Okay, open the CS_proj file. So there's no solution today. Solution file is not there today. All of these are individual projects that you can go and open one by one. Are you clear on this, everybody? Understood?
Yes, sir.
Right? So I will be uploading all the things that we've done, but no one common place where you can open everything. You'll have to individually open. All right. So we're going to continue with a little bit more of files in the second session where we're going to talk about serialization. So if you have tried out the file handling code, then it will become easier to understand serialization. So I'll see you post lunch after the break. Okay. Bye for now.
Okay, sir.